Hi, sorry I'm late. I'm sorry. How are you? How is everyone? How are you doing? Oops, that's not the right one. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not been a good morning, so I'm just going to continue with the show and get the UN up on the screen, and then I'm going to just take care of myself. Hi, Kevin. How are you? Good to see you. Oh, it's not been a good morning. But hi, it's Wake and Bake, and I'm Lolo. Yeah, that's right. That's right. The one and only. All right, where's my goddamn fucking stream? Here we go. I don't want his. God damn it. Fuck you, Steve Lookner. I'm going to tell you right now, I got a fucking rant inside of me about people on the internet. Where's a good thing? I had everything perfect, but no. No. Are they talking? Okay. How come I can't hear you?
Kenya
Okay.
for their important contributions
Why
to
is
the
it
work
playing
of the
through there?
Council during their terms.
I'm not even sure why it's playing through there. I hope things get
I
better
shall
too,
also like to
because this
take
is
this
putting me
opportunity
way
to pay
behind on
tribute
my
on behalf of the
scale.
Council to His Excellency Mr. Samuel
I don't know why this is doing.
Zobogar, a permanent representative of Slovenia, for his service as the
Okay.
President of the Council for the month of December. I'm sure I speak for all members of the Council in expressing deep appreciation to Ambassador Zobogar and his team for this great diplomatic skill with which they conducted the Council's business last month. The provisional agenda of this meeting is the threat to international peace and security. With Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Cuba, Eritrea, Islamic Republic of Iran, Mexico, Nicaragua, Paraguay, South Africa, Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to participate in this meeting. It's so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's
That's
Provisional
the
Rules of
president
the
of the UN
Procedure,
Security
I
Council.
invite the following briefers to participate in this meeting. Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, the Undersecretary General for the Political and Peace-Building Affairs. Mr. Jeffrey Sachs, President of UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network and Director of Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University, and Ms. Mercedes de Freitas, Founder and Executive Director of Transparencia Venezuela. It's so decided. Security Council will now begin its consideration for item 2 of the agenda. Or to Ms. Rosemary and now give the DiCarlo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I'm going to deliver a statement from Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who is not able to be here this morning. Mr. President, members of the Security Council, we meet at a grave time following the 3 January United States military action in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The broad outlines of the events of Saturday have been widely reported. Early that day, U.S. forces were active across Caracas and in the northern states of Miranda, Aragua, and La Guaira. The extent of casualties resulting from these actions remains undetermined. In a statement on social media on Saturday, President Donald Trump announced the conduct of a, I quote, large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, end quote. During a press conference on Saturday, President Trump stated, we are, and I quote again, we are going to run the country until such time that we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition, end quote. The government of Venezuela has characterized the United States' action as a military aggression carried out in civilian and military areas and as a flagrant violation of the Charter, posing a threat to international and regional peace and security. As we speak, President Maduro is being held in New York, accused by U.S. authorities, along with his wife, Celia Flores, of serious criminal offenses. What is less certain is the immediate future of Venezuela. I am deeply concerned about the possible intensification of the instability in the country, the potential impact on the region, and the precedent it may set for how relations between and among states are conducted. Mr. President, the situation in Venezuela has been a matter of regional and international concern for many years now. Attention on the country only grew following the contested presidential elections in July 2024. The panel of electoral experts I appointed at the Venezuelan government's request to accompany the elections highlighted serious issues. We have consistently called for the full transparency and the complete publication of the results of the elections. As reported to the Council on 23 December, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has cataloged serious violations. On 3 January, Venezuelan interim President Delcy Rodriguez invoked an emergency decree throughout the national territory, extending additional security powers to the government. Mr. President, the latest developments follow a period of heightened tensions beginning in mid-August, as discussed in this Council on 2 previous occasions. I have consistently stressed the imperative of full respect by all for international law, including the Charter of the United Nations, which provides the foundation for the maintenance of international peace and security. I remain deeply concerned that rules of international law have not been respected with regard to the 3 January military action. The Charter enshrines the prohibition of the threat or use of force, political independence of any state. The maintenance of international peace and security depends on the continued commitment of all member states to adhere to all the provisions of the Charter. Mr. President, Venezuela has experienced decades of internal instability and social and economic turmoil. Democracy has been undermined. Millions of its people have fled the country. The situation is critical, but it is still possible to prevent a wider and more destructive conflagration. I call on all Venezuelan actors to engage in an inclusive, democratic dialogue in which all sectors of society can determine their future. This entails the full respect of human rights, the rule of law, and the sovereign will of the Venezuelan people. I also urge Venezuela's neighbors and the international community more broadly to act in a spirit of solidarity and in adherence to the principles, laws, and rules erected to promote peaceful coexistence.
Hi, Esmeralda. How
I
are
welcome
you? It's so good to
and
see
am ready
you.
to support
Happy
all efforts
2026.
aimed at assisting Venezuelans in finding a peaceful way forward. Mr. President, Excellencies, in situations as confused as complex as the one we now face, it is important to stick to principles. Respect for the UN Charter and all other applicable legal frameworks to safeguard peace and security. Respect for the principles of sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity of states. The prohibition of the threat or use of force. The power of the law must prevail. International law contains tools to address issues such as illicit traffic in narcotics, disputes about resources, and human rights concerns. This is the route we need to take. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefings. I now give the floor to Mr. Jeffrey Sachs.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, the issue before the Council today is not the character of the government of Venezuela. The issue is whether any member state by force, coercion, or economic strangulation has the right to determine Venezuela's political future or to exercise control over its affairs. This question goes directly to Article 2, Section 4 of the United Nations Charter, which prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. The Council must decide whether that prohibition is to be upheld or abandoned. Abandoning it would carry consequences of the gravest kind. Let me offer some background. Since 1947, the United States foreign policy has repeatedly employed force, covert action, and political manipulation to bring about regime change in other countries. This is a matter of carefully documented historical record. In her book, Covert Regime Change, political scientist Lindsay O'Rourke documents 70 attempted U.S. regime change operations between 1947 and 1989 alone. These practices did not end with the Cold War. Since 1989, major United States regime change operations undertaken without authorization by the Security Council have included, among the most consequential, Iraq 2003, Libya 2011, Syria beginning in 2011, Honduras 2009, Ukraine 2014, and Venezuela from 2002 onward. The methods employed are well established and well documented. They include open warfare, covert intelligence operations, instigation of unrest, support for armed groups, manipulation of mass and social media, bribery of military and civilian officials, targeted assassinations, false flag operations, and economic warfare. These measures are illegal under the UN Charter, and they typically result in ongoing violence, lethal conflict, political instability, and deep suffering of the civilian population. The recent U.S. record with respect to Venezuela is also clear. In April 2002, the U.S. knew of and approved an attempted coup against the government. In the 2010s, the United States funded civil society groups actively engaged in anti-government protests. When the government cracked down on the protests, the U.S. followed with a series of sanctions. In 2015, President Barack Obama declared Venezuela to be, and I quote, an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. In 2017, at a dinner with Latin American leaders on the margin of the UN General Assembly, President Trump openly discussed the option of the U.S. invading Venezuela to overthrow the government. During 2017 to 2020, the United States imposed sweeping sanctions on the state oil company PDVSA. Oil production fell by 75% from 2016 to 2020, and the real GDP per capita declined by 62%. The UN General Assembly has repeatedly voted overwhelmingly against such unilateral coercive measures. Under international law, only the Security Council has the authority to impose such measures. On the 23rd of January 2019, the United States unilaterally recognized Mr. Juan Guaido as interim president, and a few days later froze approximately $7 billion of Venezuelan sovereign assets held abroad and gave the designated authority over certain of these assets. These actions form part of a continuous U.S. regime change effort spanning more than 2 decades. In the past year, the United States has carried out bombing operations in 7 countries, none of which were authorized by the UN Security Council, and none of which were undertaken in lawful self-defense under the Charter. The targeted countries include Iran,
Congress,
Iraq, Nigeria,
Sachs.
Somalia, Syria, Yemen, and now Venezuela. In the past month, President Trump has issued direct threats against 6 UN member states, including Colombia, Denmark, Iran, Mexico, Nigeria, and of course, Venezuela. Members of the Council are not called upon to judge Nicolas Maduro.
This is the
They are
UN
not
Security
called upon to
Council, so
assess
it's a
whether the
smaller
recent
subset
US
of the
attack
UN,
and
peace love,
ongoing
and they
naval
discuss
quarantine
matters like this,
results
how
in
to
freedom or
respond
in
when people,
subjugation.
fucking
Members of the
illegally
Council
invade
are
another
called upon
country
to
and
defend
abduct their leader.
international law
That kind of
and
stuff.
specifically the UN Charter. The realist school of international relations, articulated most brilliantly by John Mearsheimer,
I don't care
accurately
how bad
describes the
Maduro is.
condition
That's
of
not how you
international
do it.
anarchy as the
Sorry.
tragedy of great power politics. Realism is therefore a description, not a solution for peace. Its own conclusion
Hi,
is that
Kathy
anarchy
Grossplants. It's so
leads
nice
to
to see you
tragedy.
again. Happy New Year
In the
here.
aftermath of World War I, the League of Nations was created to end the tragedy through the application of international law. Yet the world's leading nations failed to defend international law in the 1930s, leading to renewed global war. The United Nations emerged from that
Thank you, Peace
catastrophe
Love.
as
I appreciate
humanity's
that.
second great
That's what
effort
I hope to do.
place international law above international anarchy. In the words of the Charter, the UN was created, quote, to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. Given that we are in the nuclear age, failure cannot be repeated. Humanity would perish. There would be no third chance. To fulfill its responsibilities under the Charter, the Security Council should immediately affirm the following actions. The United States shall immediately cease and desist from all explicit and implicit threats or use of force against Venezuela. The United States shall terminate its naval quarantine and all related coercive military measures undertaken in the absence of authorization by the UN Security Council. The United States shall immediately withdraw its military forces from within and along the
I
perimeter
get that it's
of
convenient
Venezuela,
to think that
including
we want Maduro
intelligence,
released,
naval,
but
air,
that's
and
not
other
right.
forward
So
deployed
that's
assets
a
positioned for
simple-minded
coercive
way of
purposes.
approaching what the
Venezuela shall adhere
argument
to the
actually
UN
is.
Charter and to the human rights protected in
Oh,
the
there's Mikey
Universal
Waltz.
Declaration of Human Rights. The Secretary General, I recommend, should immediately appoint a special envoy mandated to engage relevant Venezuelan and international stakeholders and to report back to the Security Council within 14 days with recommendations consistent with the Charter, and the Security Council should remain urgently seized of this matter. All member states should refrain from unilateral threats, coercive measures, or armed actions undertaken outside the authority of the UN Security Council. In closing, Mr. President and distinguished members of the Council, peace and the survival of humanity depend on whether the United Nations Charter remains a living instrument of international law or is allowed to wither into irrelevance. That is the choice before this Council today. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Sachs for his briefings. I now give the floor to Ms. Mercedes de Fratea.
Fun fact, that was Jesse Ventura. I don't know how it happened, but that's what happened.
Okay. My apology. I now give the floor to Ms. Mercedes de Freitas.
Good morning. I speak in Spanish. Please give the translation. Buenos días, embajadores,
Good morning,
representantes de estados y
ambassadors,
gobiernos. Gracias
representatives
por esta
of
oportunidad.
states and governments. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Sí, sí, no me escuchan.
Can you hear me?
Aló, aló, ¿me
Can you
escuchan?
hear me?
¿Me
We can
escuchan?
hear you,
Disculpa,
yeah.
ya estoy aquí. Excuse me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning. I speak in Spanish. Buenos días, señores embajadores,
Good morning,
representantes de
ambassadors,
estados.
representatives
Gracias por esta
of
oportunidad
heads of
de
state and
presentar los
government.
resultados
Thank
de
you
investigación que
to
desde Transparencia
enable me to
Venezuela
tell you something about Transparency
hemos estado
Venezuela,
desarrollando para
the work that we have been doing.
Para la okay. He organizado
We have organized
la información que voy a presentar
I've
en 5 puntos.
I've organized some information I'm going to put forward to you in 5 points.
Volumen. Bueno, he
Continue.
organizado la información que voy a presentarles en 5 puntos.
I've arranged the
I think
information
we're
I'm
having
going to
technical difficulties.
give to you in
Punto
around
número
5
uno.
points. Let me
La
make the
red de
most of my
gran
time.
corrupción
First of
transnacional
all,
de origen
one,
venezolano
the
tiene presencia con empresas,
corruption
propiedades
in
y actividades en
Venezuela
73 países del mundo.
is seen in 73 countries of the world. We have organized, we've seen hundreds of cases that we have documented over the years, more than 500, 600 cases in various countries.
Continue. We can hear you. Go ahead. Continue.
I'm not sure why she's stopping.
Can you hear us? We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I don't know why she continues to stop. She should just...
Solo en los sistemas de justicia de 30 países
We looked at the justice
se
systems of
procesaron
30 countries,
172 casos de
and
gran corrupción,
172 cases
donde
were
el 60%
dealt
de
with for
ellos
corruption,
suman más de
and
72 mil millones
more
de
than
dólares.
$72 trillion were involved.
Esos 72 millones de dólares que
$1
están
million
comprometidos
were
son
involved.
dinero público venezolano.
This was public
Nicolás
Venezuelan money.
Maduro y su
Nicolas
familia
Maduro and his
son el
family.
foco de la red. Y él cuenta
The interpreter cannot hear the speaker.
petróleo de Venezuela ha sido el instrumento central, involucrada directa e indirectamente en el 90%
It
de
was a
los casos
system
de
that was
corrupción
involved in
que hemos
90%
identificado.
of the corruption
Punto número
cases.
2.
Point number
Las
2.
organizaciones criminales nacionales
The national
tienen
criminal
una
organizations.
relación simbiótica con la administración de Nicolás Maduro.
The interpreter cannot hear the speech to provide sufficient interpretation. I apologize.
Para facilitar, soportar, impulsar, proteger y dirigir las operaciones ilícitas. Las economías ilícitas de oro, droga, extorsión y trata de personas alcanzaron en 2024 $8,000 millones de dólares.
It's because
Can you
her
hear us?
sound is so bad that the
Ms.
interpreter
Freitas?
can't make out the words that she's saying in order to interpret them. So
can you hear us?
He can't. Her
the
her sound is
interpreters cannot
garbly.
hear you. Can you
Her
slow
signal
down
is
and
bad.
raise your voice a little bit?
She actually should just call in. I think.
Hay un delay.
I think she should call in. I don't know. I feel like
There's a
there
delay.
should be. Where's Josh? Where's Topher? Someone get the UN Topher.
The problem the interpreter is having is with the quality of the sound,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
the
insufficient
quality.
for interpretation.
Sí,
It's not the
exactly.
speed.
Dígame. Sí, la oigo con delay. Sí,
That's a
I'm
delay,
hearing
yeah.
you, but with a delay, says the
sí,
speaker.
la escucho.
I can hear you, though.
Okay. Please proceed
Okay,
now.
Tom. We'll be quiet. But I will have to go to the bathroom, so you're going to have to pull
Ok,
over.
perfecto.
Very well.
El punto número 2. Las
Point
organizaciones
2.
criminales nacionales e internacionales
National and international criminal organizations
tienen una relación simbiótica con la
have a
administración de Nicolás
symbiotic
Maduro,
relationship with the regime of Nicolas Maduro,
capacidades,
sharing
utilizando las
capacity,
estructuras del Estado
using the
para
state
facilitar,
structures to
soportar,
facilitate
impulsar, proteger y dirigir las
their work
operaciones
and to
ilícitas.
protect
Las
illicit
economías ilícitas
operations.
de oro,
In
drogas,
gold, for example,
extorsión
drugs,
y trata de
extortion,
Yes, she
and
is,
human
and
trafficking.
you could be very right.
And according to our estimates,
$8,200 millones de dólares.
this accounts for about $8 billion. Gold, for example, only 20% is reported to the national treasury. The rest goes to private accounts where there are members and allies with the government. This mining industry has exploited so many people using national parks and also the Amazon area, and then to
Okay,
launder
you
the
know
money
for a
from
fact-
corruption.
I'm just going to stop her for a minute because I want to make sure we understand this. Anywhere that there is mining in the world, anywhere that there is mining in the world, there is child slavery. There's indentured servitude. So I'm just going to tell you that now, that I would not be shocked to hear that in Venezuela, as in other mining countries, you have children enslaved, you have people enslaved to work the mines, especially in the smaller mines that then feed into the larger mining companies. That's especially a problem in Africa. So there's a lot here. There's a lot.
The network has money laundering structures that are very sophisticated, and since 2021, they've been involved in this work. 3, great corruption has led to a decrease in the income of the state and therefore public expenditure, and therefore affecting the quality of basic services. The current economy is in crisis. There's no money either to service the debt. Although Venezuela has been in technical default since 2017. We owe more than $15 million. 4, Venezuelans have had to learn to live with just a few hours of electricity per day in very many parts of the country. And we've learned to protect ourselves from daily extortion from the armed Colombian groups or the organized crime groups, but also elements of the state. So many families only have one meal per day below the calories that they need, affecting their nutrition, which is getting worse day by day. Humanitarian programs are not sufficient.
Oh my God, Gal, I was listening to that this morning.
Between
I don't even
government departments. The government has captured all institutions, beginning with the justice institutions and also the oil company responsible for the majority of income for the country, in order to maintain control.
This is absolutely the worst administration that deals with
a repressive system.
They are like
it's getting worse and worse. It's being applied.
They make everything a weapon. Retirement, everything. They're going after Mark Kelly. They made him a captain and are trying to lower his
at the end of
his retirement package, which is unbelievable to me. Somebody's earned that.
26
Go away.
people died during torture or because of a lack of medical care. The United Nations has documented many of these cases.
It's so petty. It's so petty. Why is this allowed?
We need a transparent state that is accountable, that will guarantee the rule of law and human rights, that will protect public goods for everyone without privilege, a system that's autonomous and independent. We need investment in building capacity that will enable us to have a dignified life. We must respect the will of the Venezuelan people to live in peace and democracy. And finally, a request to you. Freedom for all political prisoners in the country. Thank you very much.
I thank to Ms. Freitas for her briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President,
Colombia
would like to thank Somalia in your quality as President of the Security Council for having quickly responded to our request to convene this emergency meeting, as well as thanking China and Russia for their support for holding of this meeting. And we wish you, Mr. President,
una exitosa gestión durante este mes de enero,
a successful month
delicado
managing the work of the Council at a particularly delicate time for international peace and security. I'd also like to thank Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs and Peace Building of the United Nations and the invited briefers. We thank them all for their briefings. This is the first time Colombia is taking the floor in the Security Council as a non-permanent member for the period
It's failed NSA Director Mikey Waltz. That's right, and he gets really pissy at these things.
Responsibility with a deep sense of duty.
He wants to just be in New York and like get his toes sucked on Grindr.
Defending international law and the purposes and principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. international peace
I love you.
and security, the peaceful settlement of disputes, the prohibition of the use of force, sovereign equality, respect for the territorial integrity and political independence of all states. Colombia condemns categorically the events that occurred in the early morning
Look
of the
at
3rd of January
everybody.
in
It's
Venezuela,
Rance
where
and Grace
we
Lisa. Good
saw
morning,
multiple
ladies.
explosions and air activity over Caracas and other areas of the country as part of a military attack carried out by the United States, which included bombings of civilian and military infrastructure, creating panic amongst the population. All of this represents clear violations of the sovereignty, political independence, and the territorial integrity of Venezuela. There is no justification whatsoever under any circumstances for the unilateral use of force to commit an act of aggression. Such actions constitute a serious violation of international law and the United Nations Charter, including the prohibition on the use or the threat of the use of force, the principle of the respect for sovereignty and the full authority of states over their territory, including their natural resources, the territorial integrity of states, and the principles of collective defense, particularly when they directly endanger the population and civilian assets. Defending these principles is not an option. Indeed, it's a common obligation that we have in order to preserve international peace and security. We need to remember that the provisions of the Charter allow for the use of force only under exceptional circumstances, in legitimate defense in the face of an armed attack, or when there is an express authorization by this Council in accordance with Chapter 7. And even in those cases, this does not amount to assuming political control of another state. In this regard, we reject any unilateral military action, any act that could worsen the situation or endanger the civilian population, and we would call for a de-escalation and non-resort to the use of force, which endangers people finding themselves in this delicate situation. They must be the absolute priority. We have learned from our experience that the civilian population is always the one that pays the highest price in armed conflict. Mr. President, Latin America and the Caribbean have proclaimed themselves to be a zone of peace, and this collective commitment and will of our region must be respected. Unilateral action that is contrary to international law endangers regional stability, increases insecurity, and worsens the already complex conditions being faced by the civilian population, with devastating effects that will transcend the sovereign borders of Venezuela to have a direct impact on countries of the region, such as Colombia. In order to act preventively, Colombia has engaged in measures to protect the civilian population and preserve the stability of the border, addressing the possible needs of the population, particularly the migrant population, in coordination with local authorities. Colombia has been and will continue to be show solidarity in receiving the Venezuelan people who, given the uncertainty created by these attacks, this may lead to a massive outflow of migration, which will require significant efforts in terms of resources and capacities to provide the necessary support and assistance to those areas affected by taking in the migrants. Mr. President, these actions that we have seen remind us of the worst interference in our area in the past, in our zone of peace, and calls to mind the commitment that we have as states to resolve our differences peacefully through dialogue and negotiation or other forms of peaceful settlement in full accordance with international law and with its instruments to which we have subscribed at the hemispheric and regional levels, such as the Charter of the Organization of American States. It's also important to understand the dimension of this situation for international peace and security beyond our region, particularly when a permanent member of the Security Council takes the decision to use force and assume control unilaterally of another sovereign state, with the aim, amongst other things, of taking its natural and strategic resources. This is very worrisome for the international community, the international order that was established after the Second World War, and flagrantly violates international law and is in clear contradiction with the United Nations Charter and the very goal for which this council was created. If a country, and particularly a country that is a permanent member of this council, disregards international law that we designed in San Francisco, what then is the role of this council, and where are the foundations for international peace and security? We are accepting that the law and the interests of the strongest prevail over multilateralism.
That is one of the most profound statements.
Agreements that we have forged with dialogue and diplomacy in this
body
very
mean
chamber.
if it has no
Democracy
power?
cannot be promoted or defended through violence or coercion, and it cannot be superseded either by economic interests. Democracy can only be built and sustained through respect for the will of peoples, the reaffirmation of the rule of law, through political dialogue and peaceful and inclusive processes. Venezuela deserves to live in peace, in democracy, prosperity, and dignity, with a government that is defined in sovereignty by no one else than the Venezuelan people and their institutions. This is why Colombia has reiterated its call to open up paths for democracy in Venezuela through specific popular decisions being taken. The importance of preserving peace, respect for international law, and the protection of life and human rights must prevail over anything else. Colombia reaffirms its conviction that working tirelessly under these principles in our new role as a non-permanent member of the Security Council is what we plan to do, and we make ourselves available, our good offices available for a diplomatic way out of the current crisis in this brotherly country. We will meet our responsibility, primary responsibility, to maintain international peace and security. And given the seriousness of the events,
This is really
we will continue
Marco's
to pay
revenge
attention
tour,
to
right?
this issue.
Like this is his part of it.
We'd also like to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations for providing his good offices to defend the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, to activate channels for mediation available to him and facilitate dialogue with the parties concerned, looking in the search for alternatives that will make it possible to find a way out of the situation led by Venezuelans themselves and provide assistance to Venezuelans that need this. In conclusion, we'd urge the parties to exercise maximum caution and restraint, to de-escalate tensions and to follow dialogue and diplomatic channels and develop mechanisms to avoid continued flagrant violations of international law. This will require the help of the United Nations and of regional organizations. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
This is like fucking
I thank the
Walmart
representative
Mountainhead.
of Colombia
Okay, this is
for her
this is if
statement.
you watched
And now
Mountainhead,
give the floor to the
this is
representative of
Walmart
Russian
Mountainhead,
Federation.
where they're all divvying up parts of the Western Hemisphere.
First and foremost, we wish to congratulate you on your accession to the presidency of the Security Council. And second, we wish to welcome
Okay, fuck this guy.
elected
All right,
members of the Security
fuck this
Council.
boiled potato.
The
This
beginning of this new
hard-boiled
year
egg.
shocked all of those throughout the world who cherished the hope that respect for international law and
what?
non-intervention in domestic affairs of other states,
What?
as well as a reliance upon diplomacy and seeking of compromise,
What
became
now?
key principles in the work of
Say
the
what
new
now?
U.S. administration.
Excuse me?
The assault against the
Are you
leader of
kidding me
Venezuela,
right now?
compounded
Are
by
you
the
about to
deaths of
explode,
dozens
buddy?
of Venezuelan and Cuban citizens, in the eyes of many, has become a harbinger of a turn
this is
back
why I'm an
to the
atheist,
era
okay?
of
Let me just-
lawlessness
actually, I'm gonna
and
stop.
U.S.
Because I want you to hear every bleeding word that this piece of flesh, this human polyp, is telling you. Okay? Okay? Let me tell you what this human polyp is trying to tell you. All right? Now I can't remember what the real thing I was going to tell you was. God damn it. But anyway, this fucking guy talks about not invading the sovereignty of another country. I'm sorry, what? What is this? Where are we? What timeline are we on? He looks like a polyp. I'm sorry. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Robert. So yeah, this guy's the last person that should be saying any of this. Oh, this is why I'm an atheist. Yeah, because if God existed, this guy would explode right now on live television. I'm telling you right now. Thank you so much, Griffey. God, I owe you a lot. I owe you a lot. I thought that was Jen for some reason. I got you guys mixed up. But thank you, Oomph. This is why I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist because if there were a God, this guy would explode right now from the hypocrisy that has built up in the gallbladder and will regurgitate. I'm just saying. God, what fucking Oomp's offended. It's been a morning, okay? My cats, I tried to go live at 7, and I'm like, push the button, everything's great, and I'm like, dee-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Everything quits. Because one of those fucking cats crawled under the desk and decided to sit his fat ass on my fucking power board. Yeah, which God? Well, that's true. Which God? I don't know. Name a God. I don't care. Either one. Any of them. Either one. Sorry. Any of them. Exactly. That motherfucker walked under my desk without me seeing. And right at 7 o'clock, when I hit the live button and everything's like, you're going live. And I'm like, hey, I'm ready to go. Woo, 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 woo. Motherfucker, everything went black. And I'm like, what just... And then I saw this little orange fucking body down there. And then I went, get up. And he was like, okay, I'll get out. And then I turned everything back on again and waited. It was just like, God damn it. It takes a while for everything to... Never mind. Anyway, that's the point. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
Domination by force, chaos, and lawlessness, which continues to afflict dozens of states in various regions of the world. There is no and can be no justification for the crimes cynically perpetrated by the United States in Caracas. We firmly condemn the U.S. act of armed aggression against Venezuela in breach of all international legal norms. In connection with the confirmed reports about the presence of the abducted president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his spouse in the United States, today, as we are aware, they are in New York, we call upon, corrects the Speaker, the U.S. leadership to immediately release the legitimately elected president of an independent state and his spouse. Any problems existing or conflict between the United States and Venezuela need to be resolved through dialogue. And this is precisely what is enshrined in the UN Charter, for purposes and the principles of which a number of states in recent years have begun to apply selectively, depending upon the political landscape. Today, we are reaping the consequences of their recklessness and selectivity in matters related to respect for the norms of international law, which were linked to the so-called rules-based world order. Here is your rules-based world order in all of its glory, which is horrifying even the staunchest Atlanticists. Mr. President, we extend our firm solidarity with the people of Venezuela in the face of the external aggression. We firmly support and completely support the policy of the Bolivarian government, which is geared towards protection of their national interests and the sovereignty of the country. Washington's aggressive acts have already been condemned by many states and multilateral associations, including the Non-Aligned Movement, the African Union, as well as a group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations. We hope that the international banditry will immediately be met with objective and comprehensive assessment at the international legal level with United Nations, universal mechanisms, and other multilateral formats being brought to bear. This process must not be impacted by the recognition or non-recognition by any given states or groups of states of the legitimacy of Nicolas Maduro. For this reason, unintelligible murmurings and attempts to avoid principled assessments by those who, in other circumstances, froth at the mouth and demand that others respect the UN Charter, today seem particularly hypocritical and unseemly. We hope you will recognize this, and we hope that you will abandon double standards and that you will not attempt to justify such an egregious act of aggression due to a fear of angering
I think it's so
the
egregious,
American
don't
global
you?
gendarme, which is
Don't
attempting
you,
to
Your
once again
Honor?
rear
Is it
its
warm in
head.
here, or
We are
is it just
particularly
me?
appalled by the unparalleled
truly appalled
cynicism
and-
which
and
Washington
dismayed.
Washington did not even
I'm so
attempt to
concerned.
conceal the true aims of its
Can't you see
operation,
how
namely the
flustered I
establishment of
am? Oh
unbridled
my
control
God!
over
Can't you
Venezuela's
just
natural
feel the
resources and the
frustration
assertion of their
in your
hegemonical
veins that's coming
ambitions
off
in
of
Latin
me right
America?
now?
In this way,
I'm about to
Washington
pop one
is
of these
generating
forehead lines.
fresh
I'm not
momentum for
kidding.
neocolonialism and for
Anybody got some
imperialism,
tea around
which
this
were
place?
repeatedly,
I don't even
decisively
know. Anybody
condemned
see
and
a window?
repudiated by
Open
the
a
peoples of
window.
this
Oh wait,
region
don't
and
open a
by
window.
the global
Don't
south
open a window.
as a whole. Distinguished colleagues, under these circumstances, it is exceedingly important for the entire international community to unite and to definitively reject the methods and tools of U.S. military foreign policy, which have been demonstrated in the case of Venezuela. This is the only way it is possible to compel Washington to revisit and to abandon their dangerous misconceptions. As we stated during previous meetings on Venezuela, the bell
DIY, I'm so
now
sorry.
tolls
Oh my
across
God.
the region, ringing for every country
That's
of
so
the Western
terrible. I'm so
Hemisphere.
sorry about
The
that.
bell is ringing for all UN member states and for the
Hey,
future
I
of
had
the
blocked
organization
Adriana
itself.
during the rainy
Failing to hear this
stream
call today is
because my
tantamount
fingers,
to
the phone was
projecting
all wet
cowardice
in my
and the lack of
fingers, and I was in the
principle,
dinosaur suit,
essentially blessing
idiotically
ongoing,
trying to read chat.
encroachments
And
of
poor
international
Adriana
law
got
and
zapped.
rejecting
And I didn't know how
civilized
to bring her
international
back.
conduct as a whole. We cannot
But we
allow
just figured it out.
the United States to proclaim itself as some kind of a supreme judge which alone bears the right to invade any country, to label culprits, to hand down and to enforce punishments, irrespective of notions of international law, sovereignty, and non-intervention. Is this the world we sought to attain as we marked the 80th anniversary of the adoption of the Charter of the United Nations, when we all signed on
cannot
to
help himself.
the relevant
He
Security Council
cannot help
presidential
himself.
statement? Is this the aim of United Nations reform, which we all advocate? Or has the United Nations and Security Council thereof, do they no longer exist? And is there need
Hey,
now to
motherfucker,
seek from Washington a patent to...
The Security Council of which you speak, dumb fuck, is the same Security Council that has over and over and over and over and over again condemned Russia for their aggression against a sovereign state. Does that sound familiar? So, you, my friend, can shart your pants and go to the bathroom and go home because you're an idiot. God, these fascists, man, I'm going to tell you, these fascists, they're wily. They are wily motherfuckers. And they have literally zero shame. Zero shame. This guy can sit here and go, oh, it's so sad that you let bad U.S. go in and invade another country on which they have no sovereignty. That's so sad. It's so sad. I was a Russian student, so back off. You know, like, it's just ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And he's ridiculous. Like, he should have stopped like 15 minutes ago. All right. Sorry. Here we go.
Rule, so to speak, and is the self-determination of every person's and their right to determine their future worthless? These are the questions that we all must address today. And if this response is sincere, if it is principled, then perhaps the U.S. leadership
yeah, I just set you up for that one. That's right. Oomph has the answer. Supposed demonstration of Security Council bankruptcy is among the fascist
they will perhaps glance at
objectives.
their own constitution, their constitution of the United States, which begins with the words, we the people of the United States, and will begin, in fact, to recognize the sovereignty of other states rather than deposing inconvenient regimes. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation and now give the floor to the representative of China.
President. 中方支持安理会就美国对委内瑞拉发动军事打击召开紧急会议。感谢迪卡洛副秘书长宣读古特雷斯秘书长的通报。我认真听取了通报人的发言，欢迎委内瑞拉常驻代表和其他国家代表出席会议。1月3日，美国悍然对委内瑞拉发动大规模军事打击，强行控制委内瑞拉总统
forcibly seized Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife and took them out of the country. It claimed that it will run Venezuela and even didn't rule out launching a second round of military operations on an even larger scale. China is deeply shocked by and strongly condemns the unilateral, illegal, and bullying acts of the U.S. For some time now, the international community has repeatedly expressed grave concern over the U.S. sanctions, blockade, and threats of force against Venezuela. The Council convened 2 emergency meetings, during which Secretary General Guterres, many Council members, and countries in the region and beyond unanimously called for abiding by the UN Charter and the international law, maintaining calm and restraint, resolving disputes peacefully, de-escalating tensions, and safeguarding regional stability. However, as a permanent member of the Council, the U.S. has disregarded the grave concerns of the international community, wantonly trampled upon Venezuela's sovereignty, security, and legitimate rights and interests, and seriously violated the principles of sovereign equality, non-interference in internal affairs, peaceful settlement of international disputes, and the prohibition of the use of force in international relations. These principles constitute the fundamental tenets of the UN Charter and form the cornerstone of maintaining international peace and security. The U.S. has placed its own power above multilateralism and military action above diplomatic efforts, posing a grave threat to peace and security in Latin America and the Caribbean, and indeed internationally. China firmly opposes this, and the international community has also expressed widespread grave concern and strong condemnation.
We urge the U.S. to heed the overwhelming voice of the international community, abide by international law and the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, cease infringing upon the sovereignty and security of other countries, stop toppling the government of Venezuela, and return to the path of political solutions through dialogue and negotiations. We call on the U.S. to ensure the personal safety of President Maduro and his wife and to release them at once. We support the Council in fulfilling its primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security, and we support all efforts by the UN Secretary General, regional countries, and organizations that contribute to promoting dialogue and de-escalating the situation. President, the lessons of history are a stark warning. Military means are not the solution to problems, and the indiscriminate use of force will only lead to greater crisis. The U.S. bypassed the Council to launch military operations against Iraq, blatantly attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, and imposed economic sanctions, military strikes, and even armed occupations on multiple countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. These actions have caused persistent conflict, instability, and immense suffering for the ordinary people. Did these actions bring peace and stability?
I have a story about
development
that,
and prosperity?
We'll be
the international
about
community
that.
sees this clearly.
Oh, yes.
Venezuela is an independent sovereign state with every right to defend its sovereignty and national dignity. Countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are important forces in maintaining world peace and stability and promoting global development and prosperity, and they have every right to independently choose their development paths and partners. No country
It's not always on, but I turned it on when
presume to be the international judge. China
about 80 were killed when you count the Cuban citizens that were there. And it was really assassinations of the security team.
We firmly support the regional countries in upholding the status of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. We demand that the United States change its course, cease its bullying and coercive practices, and develop relations and cooperation with regional countries on the basis of mutual respect, equality, and non-interference in international affairs. China stands ready to work with the regional countries and the international community to strengthen solidarity and cooperation, uphold fairness and justice, and jointly safeguard peace and stability in Latin America and the Caribbean. I thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement and now give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the A3 members, namely the Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, and my own country, Liberia. We thank the presidency for promptly convening this important meeting. We congratulate Somalia on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month and warmly welcome all new members. The A3 appreciates
There was something about
U.S.
Chinese citizens there. Now I can't recall the
DiCarlo's
news,
comprehensive briefing and listened carefully to the remarks offered by civil society representatives. We also welcome the representative of Venezuela and the representatives of the region to this meeting.
Well, I'm going to stop him for a minute. Hold on to your butts, okay? Because Mike Waltz is there, all right, from the U.S. of A. God fucking damn it. That's right, Mike Waltz. I got fired from one job, god damn it, because I had a little problem with a signal chat or something like that. I had a little problem with that. But, you know, yeah, so I got fired from one job, but they gave me this job. And let me tell you, Mike Waltz is here to fight. I'm not here to play. I'm not here to play. Okay? So I'm going to be talking to you a lot like this. I'm going to be talking to you a lot like this today. Okay? So the US of A, god damn it. That's how we say it now. The US of A, god damn it. we're going to be, we don't care what you say. Nana, nana, nana. That's what I have to say. Nana, nana, nana. Nana, nana, nana. Okay? Okay? I'm watching you. I'm watching you. Hey, Iran. Hey, Iran. Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared yet? Anyway, so that's, thank you so much. Nana, nana, boo, boo. That's right. That's what we have to say. That's all we got. That's all we got. But you know what? That's enough. That's enough for us. We don't need any more. So you can go take your democratic sovereignty and all the whatevers, and you can shove them up your oil pipe. That's right. I said it. Spock is getting uncomfortable. It's just acting, Mr. Spock. It's just acting. It's not good acting, but it's just acting. But that's Mike Waltz, and he's coming up, and he's quite entertaining, so get ready to rumble.
Mr. President, the A3 aligns itself with the recent
international Karen
of the African Union on the situation in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and continues to monitor developments there with deep concerns. In particular, we note reports regarding the detention of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife and incidents involving Venezuelan institutions. Such developments present serious challenges not only to Venezuela's internal stability, but also underscore the imperative to safeguard the broader peace and security of the region. The A3 remains steadfast in its commitment to the fundamental principles of international law, including the full respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity
Liberian voices
of
again.
states
I just love
as enshrined
so
in the Charter
to me.
of the United Nations in the interest of regional stability and international peace. We believe these are essential foundations for international cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Our position underscores the importance of dialogue, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect for constitutional and institutional frameworks. Mr. President, the complex situation in Venezuela requires a comprehensive response that is both inclusive and nationally owned. We continue to hold that a sustainable and peaceful resolution can only be found through constructive dialogue among Venezuelans themselves, with genuine respect for the aspiration and rights of the Venezuelan people, and with the constructive support of the international community. The A3 expresses its solidarity with the people of Venezuela and reiterates the African Union's commitment to peace, stability, and mutual respect among nations and regions. It's important for all parties, both within Venezuela and in the broader international community, to exercise restraint and responsibility, upholding international law and avoiding any action that could escalate tension or threaten regional stability. The A3 stands ready to support all efforts within this council and in cooperation with regional partners to facilitate a peaceful, inclusive, and lasting resolution to the situation in Venezuela. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Liberia, for the statement, and now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Mr. President, thank you
Okay,
for
strap
chairing.
in. Strap in, bitches.
And I particularly want to thank you, Mr. Freitas, for your briefing. And I'll point out that Mr. Freitas is in exile, having fled the regime. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for shedding a light on the true atrocities of the illegitimate Maduro regime. This past weekend, colleagues, the United States successfully carried out a surgical law enforcement operation facilitated by the U.S. military against two indicted fugitives of American justice, narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. Colleagues, Nicolas Maduro is responsible for attacks on the people of the United States, for destabilizing the Western Hemisphere, and illegitimately repressing the people of Venezuela.
Wait. It'll come to me. Huh. Why does that sound so familiar? I do a better Mike Waltz than Mike Waltz does. I just want to put that on the record. My Mike Waltz is better than Mike Waltz's Mike Waltz. So there.
There is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation in furtherance of lawful indictments that have existed for decades. The United States arrested a narco-trafficker who is now going to stand trial in the United States in accordance with the rule of law for the crimes he's committed against our people for 15 years. A similar action was taken in 1989 against Manuel Noriega. He was arrested, indicted, convicted in a court of law, served in prison in the United States and in Panama, and the Panamanian people, the American people, are safer for it. And undeniably, the region was more stable. This law enforcement action was directed consistent with the President of the United States' responsibility as Commander-in-Chief to protect Americans at home and abroad against a fugitive who is directly responsible for narco-terrorism that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and created destabilizing violence throughout our hemisphere. Nicolas Maduro and his co-defendant, Celia Flores, have been transferred here to the United States to stand trial for their crimes. Maduro was indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York and faces very serious criminal charges for his involvement in a wide-ranging conspiracy to conduct narco-terrorism, to traffic cocaine and other drugs, and conducting international weapons trafficking. The overwhelming evidence of his crimes will be presented openly in U.S. court proceedings. Colleagues, Maduro is not just an indicted drug trafficker. He was an illegitimate so-called president. He was not a head of state. For years, Maduro and his cronies have manipulated Venezuela's electoral system to maintain their illegitimate grip on power. In fact, just 2 years ago in 2024, a UN panel of experts report found that the election in that year was absolutely and completely a farce and fell well short of the most basic transparency and integrity measures essential to upholding credible elections. If the UN and the United Nations in this body confers legitimacy on an illegitimate narco-terrorist and the same treatment in this charter of a democratically elected president or head of state, what kind of organization
Did you read this on the train?
We should note
there, Mikey,
that over 50 countries, many nations, including the European Union, including a number of Latin American countries in the region. And of course, the United States, again, over 50 countries rejected the legitimacy of Maduro's re-election following the disputed 2024 elections and do not recognize him as Venezuela's legitimately elected president.
I'm gonna double tap
Maduro
that bitch.
unlawfully refused to peacefully cede power after the Venezuelan people voted him out of office in the 2024 election. So therefore, Maduro was a fugitive from justice.
You can't write this script. You cannot write this script. I'm sorry to interrupt him. You can't write there was never this oh, meowing star, good morning, darling. This is the script that could never have been written if you put together your wildest imagination from time immemorial, but specifically the 80s and beyond, to get us here, to get us to this point, that you would have this timeline is not, no producer, no studio would take. I hope LB is writing this movie. That Grace Lee said that's the best idea I've ever heard. We need to do that. We need to campaign for that. Because I am telling you, you put this script in front of any studio, they would probably tell you to go fuck yourself. You've got the garbage can of garbage cans in that script. There's no way all of those things happen within that timeline. I could totally envision someone going, this is too much stuff. Like, the audience is never going to buy all this much stuff happening. I'm telling you, this is a gold mine for whoever writes this script for the feature-length film, a 3-hour megalopolis or a 2-parter. I'm telling you right now, you'll make a bazillions of dollars. Okay, because people will buy the t-shirts. I'm telling you right now. This is my best advice. I don't have the attention span or the brain to write that. But I hope somebody does. And I hope you call it the Real Housewives of the Insurrection, because that's what I coined in 2021. And damn it, I'm going to die on that hill that's I invented that. Damn it. Just kidding. Anyway, I'm telling you, this is a $1 billion prize for whoever writes this script and really nails it. I'm telling you right now. And it's not even that. I just want to see the movie, maybe, after I'm not as traumatized. Yeah, this Dumbo got fired as a national security advisor. Oh, and here he is, telling people just how offensive it is for people who have lost their elections to think about retaining power. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? What? What was that? What did I hear? Is that the sound of irony? Oh my God. Oh my God. What is it even January 6th yet? No, that's tomorrow, because we're going to read Jim Stewartson and Gal Suburban's piece, The Insurrection Was Plan B, tomorrow, and we're going to kind of go through it and see what's what. Maybe we'll do it today, actually. I don't know. This depends on how long this is. So, yeah, it is pooping in the Capitol, but at the UN. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Sorry. Here we go. We'll go back to Mikey Waltz and his rage. This is him in rage.
He is the head of a vicious foreign terrorist organization, Cartel de los Soles. This regime-sponsored enterprise coordinates with and relies on other vicious criminal organizations, namely Tren de Aragua, again, among others, to carry out its objective of using illegal narcotics as a weapon against the United States. And for its part, Tren de Aragua is a designated foreign terrorist organization with thousands of members, many of whom have unlawfully infiltrated the United States,
remember her?
and are conducting irregular
she also
warfare
got fired
and
from the State
undertaking
Department
hostile
and
actions
shoved up here
against the American people and against the United States. It's terrorizing criminals commit brutal crimes, including murders, kidnappings, extortions, and human, drug, and weapons trafficking, this administration, President Trump, will not stand for it. In fact, in March of 2025, President Trump declared that Tren de Aragua is undertaking, quote, Tren de Aragua is undertaking hostile actions and conducting irregular warfare against the territory of the United States, both directly and at the direction, clandestine or otherwise, of the Maduro regime in Venezuela. Maduro and his cronies have partnered with some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers. Quote, Tren de Aragua is unlawfully infiltrated the United States and are conducting irregular warfare and undertaking hostile actions against the American people and against the United States. It's terrorizing criminals commit brutal crimes, including murders, kidnappings, extortions, and human, drug, and weapons trafficking. This administration, President Trump, will not stand for it. In fact, in March of 2025, President Trump declared that Tren de Aragua is undertaking, quote, Tren de Aragua is undertaking hostile actions and conducting irregular warfare against the territory of the United States, both directly and at the direction, clandestine or otherwise, of the Maduro regime in Venezuela.
Yeah, we fight
Maduro
kidnapping
and
with
his
kidnapping.
cronies have partnered with
Right,
some of the most
BRB,
violent and
back.
prolific drug traffickers and narco-terrorists in the world for decades, facilitating the flood of illegal drugs coming in the United States, estimated to be several hundred tons annually. He has become rich, incredibly wealthy, off the misery of untold numbers of Americans, Venezuelans, and others, aiding and abetting international terrorist organizations like Hezbollah, coordinating with corrupt Iranian officials and other malign actors to influence not only the region, but to malignly influence the United States. In fact, in its own 2025 World Drug Report, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime identified Venezuela as a key trafficking route in the Western Hemisphere for illegal drugs, predominantly cocaine, entering the United States and increasingly Europe. As Secretary Rubio stated just yesterday, this is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live, and we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be used as a base of operation for our nation's adversaries and competitors and rivals of the United States. You can't turn Venezuela into the operating hub for Iran, for Hezbollah, for gangs, for Cuban intelligence agents, and other malign actors that control that country. You cannot continue to have the largest energy reserves in the world under the control of adversaries of the United States, under the control of illegitimate leaders, and not benefiting the people of Venezuela, and stolen by a handful of oligarchs inside of Venezuela. But it doesn't stop there. Numerous UN and international human rights organizations have issued reports documenting serious human rights abuses by the Maduro regime, including reports of extrajudicial killings, political prisoners, torture, and arbitrary and unlawful detentions. In fact, over 8 million Venezuelans have fled the country, destabilizing their neighbors in the region and creating the world's largest refugee crisis. Members of this council, colleagues, the United States wants a better future for Venezuela. We believe a better future for the people of Venezuela and for the people of the region and the world is stabilizing the region and making the neighborhood that we live in a much better and safer place. And this is why millions of Venezuelans that have fled this brutal regime are celebrating and cheering around the world as this body pontificates, including those celebrating are including in my home state of Florida, where hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have fled this regime's brutality. I want to reiterate, President Trump gave diplomacy a chance. He offered Maduro multiple off-ramps. He tried to de-escalate. Maduro refused to take them. President Trump made it clear that the narco-terrorism must stop, and yet it continued. The United States will not waver in our actions to protect Americans from the scourge of narco-terrorism and seeks peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States. And
so
now
instead,
give the floor
we
to the
have
representative of
Marco's terrorism.
Gracias.
Get it? Marco terrorism? Oh my God, I just did that.
I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the representatives of Bahrain, Colombia, Liberia, Latvia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and who have joined the Security Council as elected members and who are joining us today in the chamber. And we congratulate Somalia on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month. I'd like to thank the Secretary General for Political Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, for her detailed report representing Secretary General Antonio Guterres. She's briefed us on the situation under discussion today. We're also very grateful for the very valuable presentations by Mr. Jeffrey Sachs and Ms. Mercedes de Freitas. In this context, the Republic of Panama would like to refer to the situation that has taken place in the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which is of concern due to its possible impact on peace and regional stability. However, in the light of the unfortunate reality of the facts that we've seen, we now need to turn our attention constructively towards the future of Venezuela. However, it's important to point out that in terms of a constant principle of our foreign policy, Panama would like to reiterate our unfailing commitment to multilateralism, to the sovereignty of states, and to the unrestricted respect for international law, especially the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter, including non-intervention, respect for territorial integrity, and the prohibition of the use of force. This is mentioned in Article 2 of the United Nations Charter. These principles are, and they continue to be, the indispensable framework for the peaceful coexistence between nations.
Some of them are very upset about it.
Panama also believes it's necessary
no
to
personal
highlight
information in
the
chat,
situation
sorry.
Venezuela is facing
Just for everybody's safety, no personal information in the chat. Thank you so much, though.
By the disregard for the will of its people, as well as by a sustained erosion of democratic institutions. In this regard, Panama reiterates that it does not and will not recognize the authoritarian and illegitimate regime that has held Venezuelan men and women hostage, plunged them into one of the gravest political, social, humanitarian, and security crises in our region. Unfortunately, we have witnessed how the situation has gradually deteriorated under the regime, especially over the last year, with increased systemic erosion of democracy, hollowing out of institutions, and the rise of authoritarian and repressive practices, which have contributed to an unfortunate outcome and therefore cannot be ignored by the international community. In particular, It is essential to call for the unconditional release of persons detained for political reasons. Many of them have been deprived of their liberty merely for raising their voices in a context in which dissent is not tolerated. From this moment on, we must demand that all political prisoners that the regime continues to hold hostage, Venezuelans and
so if you, I hope you hang around, Blind Hawk, because the get off ramp links back to a story I told on the lounge a long time ago. That's all I'm going to say about that. And so we're inviting you into that
freedom of expression
yeah, I know.
and
But thank you. Welcome here.
rights must be immediately ensured.
Join the Discord. There's all
In this
kinds of
context,
shit there,
Panama
including cat
underscores
jokes.
that its position does not stem solely from a principled democratic solidarity, but also from direct impact. A Panamanian citizen, Mr. Olmedo Núñez, remains arbitrarily detained in Venezuela without formal charges, without due process, without full access to a defense, and without effective consular guarantees. Added to this is the human impact of a multidimensional crisis that has forced around 9 million Venezuelans, men and women, to leave their homes, compelled to live in displacement and vulnerability as a consequence of the institutional and social collapse generated by the regime. A crisis that has had significant regional repercussions, reflected both in the irregular migration flows from south to north of a significant number of Venezuelan nationals, as well as reverse migration movements, including also a lot of Venezuelans, the effects of which are felt particularly in countries of transit and destination that this affects, including Panama. And this has decisively contributed to illegal migration. In the face of this reality, Panama issues a clear and firm call for Venezuela's short-term future to be fully democratic. Power emanates from the people, and as stated by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Panama, José Raúl Molino, the people, the true sovereign, have already spoken at the polls, granting an indisputable victory with 70% of the votes on July 28, 2024, to the opposition candidate, Mr. Edmundo González Urrutia, as well as to María Corina Machado, who was prevented by the regime from running despite having won the primary with 93% of the votes on October 22, 2023. Additionally, the popularity of both has increased in recent months, including among police and military sectors.
That's Moms for Liberty. That's what Jim calls Moms for Liberty. His husband was involved in the threesome. The husband and wife that run it.
Guaranteeing an orderly transition.
I called them Moms for Lick My Ass. In fact, I called that to them on a space once to their face. So,
in line with this claim, Panama proudly safeguards
we have
the
background with Moms for
electoral
Liberty,
records
Moms
that
for Lick My
reliably
Ass.
certifies said victory as testimony to the inalienable right of the Venezuelan people to determine
And I just want to say, I called them Moms for Lick My Ass before the threesome story came out, so I'm taking credit for knowing that they were
the elected president would amount to
very spicy
legitimizing electoral fraud, normalizing authoritarianism, and undermining the universal principle of free elections as the source of legitimacy. Likewise,
Krusty Gnome is encouraging Venezuelans to apply for refugee status in the U.S. Wait, what's just happened? What's just happened? What's just happened? I don't even understand. What? Trump just removed, he just removed the temporary protective status for Venezuelans. Yeah, no, I don't doubt your source, Grace Lisa, for sure. But I'm like, excuse me? Like, what now? Like, who? What? This is crazy. it's just so obviously what it is and what we've described, or what everybody has described it as. It just so obviously is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Removed TPS from like 300,000 people. That's right. Oh my God, I don't know. We have fucked this country so long. Well, and not just them, but I'm saying in this particular moment, talking about Venezuela. This is crazy. I don't care how bad the leader is of a country, and et cetera, et cetera. There are legal ways to deal with this, diplomatic ways, et cetera. So that's one thing. So that's all bullshit. You know, we know it was about the oil. We know it's about everything. We know it's about the blue coltan. We know it's about, apparently, it's going to be about the tantalum when we go to Honduras or wherever, or Colombia. So we know all the things behind it, but it's like, it's just so obvious. They're not even like positioning, they're not even like spinning it. They're not spinning anything, right? They're just saying, this is what we're doing, and that's like, go fuck yourself. You know? Make me. That's what they're saying. Make me. Chrissy was saying they can go back home now since Venezuela is great again. Oh, so what? But wait, so we want Venezuelans who are here and have been here to go back to Venezuela, and then we want a bunch of Venezuelan people from Venezuela to come here as refugees? What are we doing? How does that even make sense? How does that even make sense? And no, we can't just run a country until they have elections. They had elections. And that chick won, or, you know, the chick won, or the guy won, who was running was running for the opposition leader, the one that got the Nobel Peace Prize, that's sitting in Russia right now, right? No, she's not. Where is she? Is she in Norway? I don't even know where she is. Okay, to be honest, I have no idea where that woman is. The opposition leader. But they had one where she must have, I think she won like 70% of the vote or something like that. And I think there was international observers around that particular outcome. That I don't think I'm making that up, but I would like to check myself. Machado, yes. And I think that they already had an election where they made a decision, apparently. So why isn't that decision? And why? Number one, it's not up to us, okay? Let's all go back to the foundation of this. This is not up to us. We are not, he actually ran, you stupid fucking maggots. He actually ran on the, no new wars. And now it's like more new wars. This is all of this is self-inflicted. The economics, the fear in communities, right? The international fuckery, all of it is self-inflicted by this regime. It's like it blows my fucking mind that this is where we are. But this is where we are. But this is where we are. So that's where we are. And I am very curious to see how this goes. I'm going to tell you, Grace Lisa, they don't do a great job. I mean, if you're going to, group them as a gender in that regard, they really don't do a great job. So I don't know if women's are any better. I'm not really trying to do it. I hate men, but I'm saying, they've been there. Okay. Oh, she's under the bus now. Who's under the bus? Wait. Oh, she is not popular there, and it's also weird with the Nobel Peace Prize crap. I know that's always, whatever, Nobel Peace Prize, whatever. If they have 1 million for a gold card, they are welcome in Express. Exactly. So it really, lots of schmucks are going to buy that gold card, and we're not going to vet them, and it really doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter, folks, because the end goal is, as we've been saying for years, and paid the price for saying it out loud, I'll tell you that. The end game is that services like healthcare and others will be privatized. Your pensions, etc., will probably be invested in crypto, and your Social Security will also be privatized so that it will be put in the market. This Venezuela oil thing kills a lot of birds with one stone. And that kind of imperialism, it starts with the oil, and that pays off. And he says it out loud every fucking day. God. He's like, the American companies are ready to go. They're going to go right in there, and they're going to go ahead and take care of all the oil, and everything's going to be fine. So this is clearly the payoff from the promise that's been made to the fucking oil industry before the election last year. Like, specifically, like, it just fucking all line, like, the circumstantial evidence is off the charts. Let's just put it that way. Everything should be adjudicated. But I'm saying right now, the corruption in this regime, MAGA, is off the rails. And none of the spoils are going to flow down to anyone's pocket but the rich. And I'm telling you right now, here's my, and everyone's like, what do we do? What do we do? And I understand. I'm like, what do we do? What do we do? I think part of what we do is really, really start to come together around money and politics. Because as Gal noted years ago when we were on a space, and I never forget it. I would never forget it, that moment. When Gal really said, hey, it seems like both right and left, we were in a space, I think, with some MAGA, actually. And she's like, what if the right and the left, whatever, could come together to overturn Citizens United? Is that an issue that there's common ground? And I'm not saying the answer to everything is we all come together, because at some point the bigots have to go back under their rocks. We're not going to change them, and there's no need to waste that energy trying. But they have to become socially unacceptable with that behavior so that there's repercussions for your behavior, because that's the way it is in the world. Rules for me and rules for thee. That's the way it is. Not a big deal, just is. Okay? So, like, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. God damn it, this was a good one. But it's, the erosion of rights in this country with the way immigration is being enforced. And another piece, I know, I was trying to be talking about solutions in money and politics, that's right. So anyway, my first point is that I think coming together to really fight and focus on getting rid of PACs and other, mechanisms where dark money and large sums of money can really sway an election unfairly. It really should be about the issues and what people plan to do in the office, the normal stuff. So I feel like that's an issue that people could come together around. And I'm not saying that's going to fix it. And I'm also not saying, I guess my point is that it's not about unity per se, but it's about starting to build back a shared reality, right? Because part of the disinformation and the damage that's been done from that disinformation is that we no longer have a shared reality. And that's why it's so hard to talk about facts over feelings, right? Or facts over truth, because everyone has a different truth, or can. So, that's kind of like, again, that disinformation. I'm telling you, it's a common thread of how we got to this point and why we are here. Is this called Wake and Bake? Are we supposed to espouse all our stoner thoughts? Yes, that's it. Well, at least I am, because I have the microphone, but you can too. You can yell at the screen. The epistemological crisis is the main problem we're facing. Yeah, it's true. And there's and if you look again at the landscape, it's not just the attack on all of our senses and the disinformation and how that has helped this regime take hold of the country, but and released a bunch of digital soldiers across the nation, soulless, I like to call them. But it also is destroying our institutions, right? Or at least seeking to. I don't think you can really destroy the complete spirit of it. But it's trying to destroy our education system, which was already struggling from too much bureaucracy and not enough creativity. And so trying to destroy institutions from within, the Russ Votes of the world, the doggies of the world, and all of that without accountability. And then to build the system that gives them the ultimate experience. The ultimate American dream is lack of accountability, right? So don't be held accountable for your crimes. Crime is good. What was that movie? Was that Blade or something like that, where it's like crime is good? Or Dredd? Was that Judge Dredd? Where it's like crime is legal or something. I don't know. But anyway, so you enter into that phase, kind of thing. Don't hold us accountable. Epstein files, what? I don't know. Epstein files doesn't make sense. He's dead. Why are we talking about him? So that's one thing. No taxes, which already has been really begun by making the corporate tax cut permanent. I don't know what that really means, permanent. Making the tax cuts permanent and giving them all of these amazing concessions with expensing your building costs and all the blah blah blah, and which was necessary because of the tariffs, because ultimately what would behoove the ruling class is for all of us, the not ruling class, to pay the bulk of keeping our economy going through paying higher prices. I'm telling you, I'm tracking my prices and it's not pretty. And we do plenty of economics on this show from time to time when we dig into it, but it's not pretty and it's not going to get any prettier, right? So, like they want to give that kind of change that structure, but really the burden will be on kind of the 99% of us that aren't in that 1%. So that's one. And these are all things that are being codified. I'm not making shit up, right? We watch Congress. These are things that are being codified as we've moved along in this 119th Congress that we have, this clown car of fascists. So anyway, oh God, please don't lose my train of thought. Please, please, please. I hate myself. Okay, wait. So it's the taxes, and then finally, it's the regulations. It's deregulating everything. It is stripping the protections from the environment. It's selling off public lands for mining operations because the minerals that are necessary in order to run what will be the infrastructure of much of our, commerce. I'm not really sure how to call that. Requires a lot of natural resources like minerals, like batteries, like water, like energy. And that's why he keeps saying in his dumb speeches, because somebody drilled it into his head, that you need to actually, you need to allow them to build their own power plants, which they're already doing, by the way. It's not like this is a future thing. This is happening now. Look at Memphis and Grok, XAI, and what's happening to that community. We're going to talk more about that and follow up on what we talked about earlier. And so these kinds of, and then he says that lie in the same breath as, well, if they make more than they need, then they can just sell it back to us really cheap or something. It's all fucking make-believe. It's the privatization of all of the things that were public utilities, which also enables people to control you, me, everyone. And if we don't want to, if that doesn't scare you, or at least give you pause, let me tell you about my best friend. He's an idiot and a fascist and a big sweaty Nazi. His name is Peter Thiel, and he runs Palantir. And pretty much Palantir, Peter Thiel and David Sachs, Mark Andreessen, et cetera, are the ones pulling the strings and deciding what they need in order to make as much money with no accountability and no regulation. No personal accountability and no regulation. So they're the ones. That's why it's so funny to me when people are like, Donald Trump should stop all wars. Donald Trump is a skin bag who wants to keep his ass out of motherfucking prison, and his family has been completely enriched this year. If you haven't tracked that, I highly recommend you do. So, excuse me if I call bullshit on the fact that Trump matters for fuck all. He matters because he keeps inflicting harm that then is followed up and codified into law. Don't get me wrong. He's a very, very dangerous person. But J.D. Vance is who scares me because he is Peter Thiel's puppet. Look it up. Fucking Peter Thiel funded his Senate campaign. They opened Rumble together. My God. So if you want to look at where the power centers are, and Congress, that's a joke. Congress, they're so scared of their base. They're so scared of their base on the Republican side. Don't fucking talk to me about Democrats. I watch Democrats. I know what they do, okay? I know what the fuck Democrats are up to. But I'm going to tell you right now, that Republican Congress is completely captured. You notice all the people who are like, I'm not going to run again. I'm not going to run again. Yeah, because they're scared. Because they can't disagree with this regime or they get fucking death threats. And they're a bunch of pussies. Right? So that's why Congress is irrelevant at this point. Those are captured troops, friends. Irrelevant. You want to talk, you want to influence something, you got to talk to the money. You got to talk to Elon. You got to talk to Peter Thiel. You got to talk to Palmer Luckey from Anduril. Good luck. You got to talk, who, by the way, is Matt Gaetz' brother-in-law. I mean, I don't know. I want to make sure everybody really understands that. And Anduril are the ones who make, hilarious Hobbit name. Anduril are the ones who make all the drones. So big government contracts for Palmer Luckey. Happens to be a friend of Peter Thiel as well. And Peter Thiel owns Palantir, or founded Palantir, whatever the fuck it is. And so they're just all kinds of happy. And that thing that we had nightmares about, and we talked about network states, kind of privatization. Oh, darling, that's coming to a corner near you too. Because Prospera and Praxis and all these motherfucking weird ass one word names that don't relate to what they're actually representing. And they're all webby connected to Peter fucking Thiel. All of those dudes, they're just going to divvy everything up. It's unfucking believable. And then on the military side, there's Honduras, there's Palau, Max is bringing up. There's Texas, I think, has one. They're trying to do one in the Bay Area. And it's where everything is privatized. So it's a company town, if you will. Like I think, what's his name's Elmo's is, I don't know if it's a Tesla thing or something, but anyway, so there's, like a lot of people, that's a survey. And let me tell you, it's going to have to be a surveillance state because that's what they do. They're doing it now. Yeah, JD is Trump. Notice JD has worked very hard over the last couple of years to Trumpify himself so that when Trump is gone, and he will be gone, when Trump is gone, because he's the Trojan horse that got them in the gates. He softened the troops. He softened us, or his base is actually who he softened. They softened the base with disinformation. Mike Flynn, Q. Yeah. So. And then on the other side, on the military side, on all this, and economics / military, never mind, right? Never mind about like what we're seeing with all these, critical minerals. We're all of a sudden we have all these deals with countries over critical minerals and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's the Mar-a-Lago Accord. I mean, that was written in the Mar-a-Lago Accord. And that was the document that Stephen Mirren, who came in with Trump this term as the chief economic advisor for the president, who is now a Fed governor. I can't remember where. He took the place of the first person who retired. Stephen Mirren wrote a document back in 2024 that was a blueprint for restructuring world trade. I think it was something like that. And they call it the Mar-a-Lago Accord. And it basically laid out piece by piece the extortion racket that would become our foreign policy and our trade policy mixed together. Because it talked about that it would behoove the United States to restructure trade such that tariffs were used as a bargaining, or actually an extortion tool to get as an extortion tool. What am I talking about? I can't look at chat because you guys are too smart, and it really distracts me. Okay, wait. Mar-a-Lago Accord. Oh yeah, security. So in the document, it talks about using trade as part of a way to get access to critical minerals and other resources of other countries, and to imply that security of said nation could depend on the reaction of said country to our offer. And so it was not only the tariffs as a revenue stream that then falls on the citizens of the United States, by the way, because we are paying higher prices, and fight me on it. Go ahead, prove me wrong. So it's the tariffs being used along with saying that there would be security guarantees that could come along with part of this like restructuring of the trade. So, that's a really nice country you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. You want to sign here? So this is why, the solving wars and other things, it's all been around getting access. We made Ukraine give us 50% of the profits, 50% of the profits of their critical minerals. Because I guess they process them, or I don't know. I don't know all the inner workings of that. It is literally that we are extorting. We are extortionists. So this is why media literacy and understanding the networks and understanding the landscape, I guess, understanding the landscape is that's helpful to me. That's why I do this show, is because I just need to understand things more. It may not, some people might not dig it, but that's what it helps me feel. At least information to me is power. Information to me is power. And so I think that it's just important to understand. And that's why I get frustrated with other streamers who are like, just have naivete around just how everything works, and they take the sound bites, for crying out loud, from like TikTok or whatever at face value. And it just kind of depresses me. Okay. I'm really done with my tirade, but thank you for letting me just really rant for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and let it play, and then I'm going to read your chat because I lost track. Okay, thank you. Bye.
establish a permanent government headed by figures from the repressive apparatus, such as Delcy Rodriguez, would constitute continuity of the system and not a genuine transition. Any political solution must be peaceful, it must be democratic, and led by the Venezuelans, with the responsible assistance of the international community, including the United Nations and regional mechanisms such as the Organization of American States. Panama does not wish and would like to avoid a scenario in which Venezuela's reality simply evolves into a change from one crisis to another, one crisis replacing another. There can be no genuine transition with Madurismo if it remains. Or if we have the same power structures preserved under new names. Any arrangement that keeps figures associated with the repressive apparatus at the center of governance would, in practice, constitute continuity of the system and not a real transition. Comparative experience shows that merely nominal transitions tend to prolong conflicts, intensify migratory flows, and perpetuate regional instability to the detriment of international peace and security. Panama will always stand in solidarity with an orderly and democratic transition process, anchored in the popular will already expressed at the polls on July 28, 2024, aimed at restoring democratic institutions through an interim period strictly limited in time, the sole purpose of which is to create the conditions necessary for the effective exercise of the Venezuelan people's right to self-determination. As a country that recovered its democracy and sovereignty, Panama can state clearly that there can be no peace without legitimacy, nor legitimacy without democracy, and that every democracy is ultimately based on respect for the popular will. Mr. President, Panama, due to our commitment to multilateralism and international law, in its capacity as member of the Security Council, will continue to contribute responsibly to collective efforts aimed at preserving peace, strengthening democracy, and supporting legitimate and sustainable solutions anchored in the sovereign will of peoples and respect for international law. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement and now give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Somalia on assuming the presidency of the United Nations Security Council in January, and wish you all success. Latvia takes its seat on the Council with a profound sense of honor and responsibility for this role. And let me thank Under-Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo for today's briefing on behalf of the Secretary General, and I thank the invited briefers. The Security Council bears primary responsibility for the global efforts to uphold peace, security, and rule of law worldwide. Latvia recalls that under all circumstances, the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be upheld. All efforts now focus on ensuring de-escalation and stability in Venezuela, based on inclusive dialogue and broad societal support. Latvia encourages all relevant actors to prioritize diplomatic efforts and work collectively towards a peaceful, democratic, and sustainable future for Venezuela. Latvia stands in solidarity with the people of Venezuela and their right to freedom and democracy, rights that were not respected by the Maduro regime during 2024 presidential elections and before, and which remain unmet to this day. The regime of Nicolas Maduro was rooted in mass repression, corruption, organized crime, including drug trafficking, and posed a grave threat to security of the region and the world. It has repeatedly violated the UN Charter and undermined international law including through open support for Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The Maduro regime does not represent the will of the Venezuelan people and has relied on widespread, systematic repressions of human rights across the country to maintain power. 8 million Venezuelans have been forced to flee the country since 2014. Latvia also remains committed to working jointly together with partners to counter global transnational organized crime networks, including in Latin America and Caribbean. Such criminal activities place the lives of countless people at grave risk, particularly women and children. Addressing these challenges requires sustained cooperation in full respect of international law. Latvia continues to closely monitor the situation in Venezuela and stands prepared to continue working with its partners to support a peaceful, democratic, and just transition that reflects the aspirations of the Venezuelan people. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for her statement and now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me also thank Undersecretary General Di Carlo for her briefing on behalf of the Secretary General. We also listened carefully to the briefing by Ms. De Freitas and Mr. Sachs. Mr. President, Denmark joins the Secretary General in expressing deep concern over the evolving situation in Venezuela. Since this Council met to discuss the situation 2 weeks ago, we have seen a drastic escalation culminating in a large-scale military operation on January 3rd. At our last meeting, Denmark urged all actors to strictly adhere to international law and to de-escalate tensions and exercise the necessary restraint. Today, we echo the Secretary General in his concern regarding the worrying implications of this military action. Independent of the situation in Venezuela, these developments constitute a dangerous precedent. International law and the UN Charter, as a pillar of the international security architecture, must be respected by all states. Denmark recalls the foundational principle of international law that forbids states from threatening or using force against another state's territorial integrity and political independence. This imperative is enshrined in Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter. Members of the UN Security Council have a special responsibility to uphold these principles. The principles of sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity must be respected. The inviolability of borders is not up for negotiation. These are universal, sacrosanct principles enshrined in international law. They apply everywhere. Mr. President, once again, Denmark calls on all parties to urgently de-escalate tensions that could threaten peace and stability in the region and beyond. International disputes should be settled by peaceful means, as stated in the UN Charter. We further call on all parties to exercise maximum restraint and to engage in dialogue and diplomacy. Denmark takes note of official statements from the United States government stating that the military operations are to combat drug trafficking and stem the illicit flow of illegal narcotics. Denmark shares the priority of combating organized crime and drug trafficking, while reiterating that counter-narcotic efforts, as all other efforts, must be conducted in strict accordance with international law, including the fundamental rules and principles of the UN Charter. Mr. President, against this backdrop, Denmark wishes to recall our solidarity with the people of Venezuela. Denmark does not recognize Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela, following the lack of transparency and integrity in the 2024 presidential elections, which failed to meet basic democratic standards. In Maduro's attempts to cling to power, his authoritarian regime grew increasingly oppressive. His regime bears responsibility for widespread and systematic violations of human rights against his fellow citizens, and he should be held accountable. The victims of the Maduro regime's alleged crimes against humanity have to be heard. The Venezuelan people have a right to democracy and self-determination exercised through peaceful, inclusive, and credible democratic processes, free from fear of political persecution, intimidation, or repression, and external political interference. This includes the rights of Venezuelans alone to determine their political, economic, and social future without coercion, pressure, or manipulation by external actors. No state should seek to influence political outcomes in Venezuela through the use of threat of force or through other means inconsistent with international law.
Welcome back, Tom.
Venezuela's future can be decided
he's
only
in court right
by the
now.
Venezuelans. We call on all parties and stakeholders to come together for a negotiated and peaceful transition to democratic rule in a process led by and owned by Venezuelans. At this critical and uncertain time, it is imperative that all parties fully respect human rights and international law. Denmark remains committed to supporting Venezuela and the aspirations of its people on its path to lasting political stability. I thank you.